Hi everyone, welcome to my personal PowerPoint. My name is Leilani Mae Mullins, and I am excited today to share with you a little bit of my cultural background. I have organized this PowerPoint to look at both my maternal and paternal side and to really see what the differences are culturally, how that worked to shape my viewpoints of the world, and really what that means for me currently, and how I react and how I am in culture. Couple of fun things: I did utilize Ancestry.com to do a lot of this PowerPoint, and I was really fascinated because on my mom's side I was able to get all the way back to 1740. On my dad's side I was able to get back to 1800. So I was able to really take a look at quite a bit, and it was really neat just to see where everyone came from. So we'll get going. We'll start with, on my mom's side, my grandma, Bonnie Lou Lockmiller. She was born August 1st, 1934. As you'll see in the next slide, she was the youngest of 11 children in her family, so had a lot of family bonds, and also was a lot of times really set aside as like the youngest and the baby. She was born with rickets, so she had quite a bit of physical delay in development, and I think this childhood illness did a lot to really set her attitudes towards illness and health to this day. You can see in the picture here her parents, and then the circle around is the 11 siblings. The oldest when she was born was 19. The Lockmiller Owings clan came from the areas of Dodge City, Kansas, and Rocky Ford, Colorado, and their ancestors came in the 1700s from Ireland and Germany. From Ireland, they weren't entirely sure. I think it's County Clare, and then from Germany, it's actually all the way near the Russian border. They came almost directly to the Kansas-Colorado area when arriving, and then the funny thing is everyone has really stayed within that same area since then. So it's been really long-standing tradition, not a lot of diversity coming in, a lot of very similar backgrounds over and over. She was born in Rocky Ford, of course, as I said, parented by siblings, so there was a lot of times when she would be shipped off to whoever had the newest baby. She said she was often the built-in babysitter for the new kids, didn't love that role. Her favorite memory from childhood was doing acrobatics, which was just something that she did outside playing on her own, not the structured gymnastics class that we think of now. Her family were farmers. She, like most people at the time, was married at 18, and then she has lived and still lives within a 60-mile radius of where she was born. So lots of time spent in one area. My papa on my mom's side, Virgil Gene Carlisle, is similar from his family, Carlisle Wyatt. They came from Pritchett, Colorado, and then from Missouri, which by way of Ireland and Scotland. They've been in Colorado, at least my papa's dad has been in Colorado since late 1700s. So again, long-standing pioneers, very early here. He was born in Baca County, as I said, on October 28th, 1932. We shared a half birthday. That was always something I loved. He was the youngest of three. Pretty traditional growing up at that time, farmed with his family, went to high school. He did finish high school. He was married at 20, and again, they lived within 60-mile radius of where they were born, so not a lot of change. His working life was spent with Santa Fe Railroad, which ultimately became a factor. He died July 4th, 2002 of lung cancer, which of course there was long-standing smoking happening in the house but part of the railroad was also there. I did want to note he was my favorite. I was partially raised by my grandparents, and he oftentimes stood in as the father figure for me. Their children are Stephen Eugene Carlisle, Gary, no middle name, Carlisle, and Kathy Jean Warner, who is my mom. She is the youngest of 3 as well, like her father. She's the only girl. Was born January 7th, 1962 in Fowler, Colorado, again in the same area that everyone has lived forever. She also, similar to my grandma, had a very sickly childhood. She actually suffered from mercury poisoning when she was really little and had to spend some time up in Denver at National Jewish. And since her parents were not financially stable enough to be able to live up there, to spend time up there, she only saw them about 5 times in that year, and she was 8 at the time. So that really, I think, contributed to a lot of independence, but also a lot of resentment held towards kind of parent figures. She was the first in her family to go to college. She went to the University of Northern Colorado for teaching. She taught family and consumer sciences at Swink, which is where I grew up, for 25 years, and has been at Goodland, Kansas now for 4 years. She married her first husband, Russ Verker, right after college, which he passed away. He was in a motorcycle accident. She then married my dad, Mark Mullins. They were divorced when I was 2, and is currently married, still married to my stepdad, Butch Warner, who is also the father of my brother. All in all, I think that some of the things to note, lots of kind of beliefs around hard work, around independence, around traditionalism. I think that's something that's really prevalent in that side of my family. On my dad's side, my gram, Mary Christner, her family comes from Pennsylvania, and they are English, Dutch, and French. Have traced that back to Mayflower. She's the youngest of 2, lived a very privileged life in Pennsylvania. Her family was lawyers and bankers, so a very different story. She went to the University of Colorado, married my pop at 22. They eloped, was a stewardess for a while, and then, of course, stayed at home when kids came along. My pop, this is him actually on his 80th birthday. He went skydiving for his 80th birthday. I was very impressed with him. The Mullins Williams clan is from Colorado and Virginia, and Irish all the way. We actually have found connection to a Mullins castle in Cork, so that's really cool. I hope to see that someday in Ireland. His father started the first bank in La Junta, Colorado, so they were here a long time. He's the youngest of 2, has a very hard-working mentality. Family was salesmen and bankers, of course. Went to UNC, always regretted not going to law school, but he did take over his father's bank. My dad was born on April 4th, 1960 in La Junta, Colorado, the eldest of 3, so he had a lot of expectations that he did not meet. They lived in La Junta, Colorado Springs, Maui, Hawaii, and then La Junta, so there was a lot of moving around as kids, which I think contributes to now. He's often just temporarily employed, moves all the time, has also had 3 marriages, married a Kathy before my mom. They divorced, married my mom, Kathy Warner. They divorced when I was 2, and currently is living with his partner, Rita. And there he is. All in all, this family structure had a lot more importance placed on money and moving up in the world, which is a very different thing for me. So a little bit about me. I was born April 28th, 1992. I was 6 weeks pre-me, so I was kept in the NICU for a little while, which then I was able to be cared for by my grandparents instead of having to go to daycare, and that was really good. I love dance, but growing up I was very quiet, always reading a book, always kind of keeping to myself, and there was a huge emphasis on achievement, and that led to a lot of stress. When I think of the 3 components of Stewart's components of culture that I wanted to talk about, motivation first, I think that on my mom's side of the family, they are motivated mostly by hard work, connection with others, whereas on my dad's side of the family, it's a lot of motivation with wealth and connection as far as moving up and a lot of that. So a lot of competition from my dad and a lot of cooperation from my mom. The perception of self and individual, I think the self is really defined on my mom's side as part of a family, whereas it's defined as an individual more on my dad's. And people are required to find who they are. And then, of course, lastly, the perception of the world, as I said, living on my mom's side, being in the hour radius of where they were born their whole life, there's a lot of bias, not a lot of diversity, so kind of some deep racism that isn't necessarily known about, but often comes out. On my dad's side, the perception of the world is always kind of a better than others type of perception. So that's kind of where I come from. I hope you enjoy.